Ah, yes. An experience in Handsworth. Over the last 30 years, of all the shows, tours, reviews, pantomimes and one-night performances I performed, none could have been more bizarre than a certain night in September 1993 at St Mary's Church Hall in Handsworth in Birmingham.
I'd been left drama school for just over a year, and within that time I had completed my first 2 tours for impresario Alexander Bridge, my music hall and panto debuts for the same producer, 2 concerts for Barry Stacey, one of which I sang with a broken jaw, care of a drunk who took a swing at me in the Birmingham subway one night, and an open-air summer season in Treasure Island, and was planning my first venture as a producer in Bent for my own company, which followed 6 months later. But it was a request from my dear friend Philip Leather that was to provide a source of innocent merriment up until the present day. Philip had learnt his craft from the late and great Douglas Byng, who was his guide and mentor up until his death. And likewise, I learnt so much from Philip in theatre discipline and the joy of some of the most nostalgic memories in theatre history. We had met at a Gilbert and Sullivan dinner in 1985 with special guest Gillian Knight, and had become firm friends ever since. But remarkably, it took 8 years before we actually performed together on stage. But in 1993, Philip's stalwarts, Nicholas and David, were both performing in La Cage aux Folles at the Grand Wolverhampton and were unavailable for a one-night stand for Handsworth Historical Society. It was hardly a #1 tour, but a booking was a booking. So Philip kindly asked if I was available, and as I had a gap between a week in rep at Peterborough and pantomime in Middlesbrough, I gladly accepted. After all, it was a chance to work together and put together a programme of numbers we actually wanted to perform from either our back catalogues or must-do list. It was also a chance for me to meet the excellent but often formidable pianist Jennifer Wardman, with whom Philip had worked many times. La Wardman had a heart of gold and really was a superb pianist if she knew she was working with anyone who knew their stuff. Our programme included Vitality by Ivy Novello, My Stock in Trade, Bar on the Piccola Marina, and Philip's Bing Cycle, all brought to a climax by a music hall medley. I'd also chucked in a medley from the Arcadians that I'd performed under Alexander Bridge to Spontaneous Indifference in Bognor Regis the previous year, and a couple of favourite numbers from the Desert Song. On my first rehearsal with Jennifer, without pausing for an answer, her opening gambit was, "Now, I know you're a professional actor, but you're not a professional singer, are you? No." I didn't have much chance to protest, considering Philip was sniggering in the background.
Thursday, the 16th of September. Tuesday, I rehearsed with Jen and David Rumelle. Had a little problem with the music. Jennifer came out with one of her faux pas to David. "You may be a professional actor, but you're not a pro singer."
Do you mind me saying, I know you're professional, but you're not a professional singer, are you?
So we've got a good running order and Richard comparing, so all should be well in Fairfield.
But it was a joy to rehearse, and Jennifer even rewrote part of a Desert Song medley to make the transitions easier. We duly rehearsed the choreography at Philip's house, and Philip costumed it beautifully with an assortment of blazers, dressing gowns and hats. Another stalwart of Philip's little touring rep was Richard Thompson, who was a mine of information when it came to theatre history.
Friday, the 24th of September. The last 2 days have been spent rehearsing dress, text, etc., and script revisals with Richard Thompson. Oh, I do love working with Richard. He puts so much hard work, and so does Jennifer. She is loyal and loving. Richard Thompson is another I've cherished working with. He is, to misquote Coward, a theatre-y sort of theatre person.
We hooked up with Richard for lunch one day and outlined the show, for which he was to provide the linking narrative about the Birmingham theatre scene. And it was fascinating information, exploring some of the most obscure facts about some of Birmingham's most obscure venues, long since demolished and long forgotten. So all was set fair. Philip was so meticulous we even had a full dress rehearsal at his home a few days before, using the rehearsal recordings so nothing much could go wrong.
I have worked well with David Rumelle. He is a good pro and gives me a lot of confidence.
We're the nightclub joys, the cabaret boys.
Now, I seem to remember Richard picking me up from my Birmingham flat to take me over to the hall in plenty of time on the day of the performance, and we set up in no time at all.
Saturday, the 25th of September. Tonight has been the most hysterical show in years. Richard Thompson was excellent, impeccably dressed. The whole show was impeccably dressed, with attention to detail all down the line. But St Mary's Handsworth has been blacklisted as a no venue, or no Nanette.
And then, amidst our aura of calm and assurance, came Jennifer's plaintive cry, "The piano doesn't work." Looking back, neither Philip or myself took any notice, as we were firmly in show mode, and took the view, how could a piano not work, for heaven's sake? But Jennifer was perfectly correct, and even though I don't think we ran through the entire programme before the show, what we heard was enough to make us realise that the cottage upright was certainly no Bechstein or Steinaway. But on to the show, and had we known what the evening had in store, we might not have been so blasé. But because our timing and musical pitch was spot on, I can honestly say we just ploughed on regardless, and were only vaguely aware that Jennifer was frantically trying to compensate for the missing notes on the keyboard. Broken it certainly was. I would hazard a guess that practically every other note was missing on that keyboard, and more seemed to drop off as the evening wore on. Very often it was a bell note that took us into a verse or key change, and all we were met with was a dull thud as Jennifer plummeted yet another missing note. I don't suppose a piano tuner had ever been in sight of that piano, and it was a wonder that the thing was actually standing. I did wonder in later years who, prior to ourselves, had experienced this phenomenon, and who afterwards was forced to pick up the pieces of this ancient cottage upright.
The piano didn't work. Poor Jennifer did everything to help, singing, counting, even la-la-ing the beats in. Vitality was okay, a good opener, but the piano had started its little vicarious tricks.
Vitality passed without incident because we were in show mode. We sang loudly and had each other for timing. A missing bell note into the patter didn't seem to faze us. The patter was underscored by a few vague thumps, only known to Jennifer, but the piano seemed to rise to the occasion. We coped with the key changes simply because we really were pitch perfect.
The originality or complicality for its vitality, but they almost cost time and flops. Vitality. They each had individuality, but in reality their speciality was a vitality enough to make him sour flops. They thought you were 16, they didn't try and they were micro tricks. They were live vitality. The sergeant gave them immortality, new with finality, the practicality of something that's lacking in us. They all have vitality plus. Do you remember Gandhi Miller? Ah, you wouldn't, I'm afraid. Marty Lloyd and Bess Tilly's Swagger Kane. Lily Elsie as the widow, Josie Collins as the maid, dear old Roby and Billy Merson as the lane. Ah, some gone, and some who still are the tops of any bill. Give me Gracie Field in place of any crooner, Hetty King still debonair, Phyllis Dare and Lucina Dare, G.H. Eliot in the Lily of Laguna. Let the charm school keep on charming, let the corner singers sing. If you want to see vitality, see dear old Douglas Bing. Vitality. It passes for the personality, originality, or topicality, or its vitality. The male is offline as pops. Vitality. They each had individuality, but in reality, their speciality was a vitality. Enough to make him sound the flops. All the stars of the past are remembered today, and the reason they lost, they were gay, vitality. The stars who gave them immortality, knew with finality, the practicality of something that's lacking in us. They all have vitality plus. They have bigger they were bigger, they had wonderful attack. They were workers, they were shirkers, they were blase, they never slack. They could feed you, they could thrill you with their energy and verve. They were servants of the public, and by golly did they serve. They were singers who were singers, nothing camper, nothing timber, but artistes to the fingertips. I'm getting short of wind. They were zealous, they were jealous of the fame that they had won. They were vitally entitled to their stardom, they were fun. And if you think that vitality has vanished, well, that's not. There's a certain Mrs. Rayner who still does quite a lot. And if you're getting very personal, I think that you'd agree. As a sample, an example of vitality and me. Vitality. The stars who gave them immortality knew with finality the practicality. There's nothing the matter with us. They all have vitality, all have vitality, all have vitality plus. For a few hours, there were the theatres, where for a few pence there were music halls and cheap theatres for lurid melodramas, ever ready, rough and raucous. The music halls, well, these had grown from the concert halls of the previous century, cheap, popular, and let's be honest, rather ridiculous. The Empire in Smallbrook Street, the Tivoli, which we now know as the Hippodrome just round the corner, the Gaiety in Coleshill Street, where the young Charlie Chaplin appeared, and the Metropole at the bottom of Snow Hill, where Birmingham's own Vesta Tilley gave her very first on-stage male impersonation. Most curious of these was perhaps the steam clock in Ladywood, owned by Mr. John Inshaw, and it really did have a steam clock in its facade. Here it was that Gus Elan first appeared professionally on stage. From the days of the music hall then, may I introduce Mr. David Rumelle with the ever-faithful cry of, "I must go home tonight."
I Must Go Home Tonight had about 4 beats out of 8, which was okay.
My rendition of I Must Go Home Tonight didn't fare too bad, as the melody didn't seem to plummet the piano's missing notes and contained spoken patter within it.
George was a fellow who went the pace with all his youthful lights, and took a great delight in staying out all night. When people were thinking of going to bed around the west in Rome, he'd go to pubs and go to clubs, but never would go. But one night inside the club he gave his pals a fright, when he said, "I'm going home," and wished them all good night. They thought that he was joking, and they all laughed out aloud. But George was very serious as he shouted to the crowd, "Oh, I must go home tonight, I must go home tonight. I don't care if it's snowing, blowing, I'm going. I only got married this morning, it fills me with delight. I'll stay as long as you like next week, but I must go home tonight."
And Philip's music hall song, The Millionaire, didn't sound too painful. Well, I say, not too painful.
The Millionaire. I just ploughed on and got laughs, but Jennifer was struggling.
On Saturday, round about 2:30 or so or more, I woke up in the middle of a score to hear another banging on the old front door. And when I went to the vintage, and it knocked me down with the pepper. Well, there stood a top with a big silk hat and a suitcase made of leather. He raised his tip for he said, "How do? Is your name Monk?" says he. I said, "Well, no, down district, Harness Henry Marks, that's me." He said, "That's great, can I come inside?" Which I thought was rather funny. Till he said to Uncle Albert's gone and died and left you all his money. I'm rich, rich, very, very rich by opening the old front door. I'm rich, 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 very, very rich, I never been rich before. He's rich, rich, very, very rich by opening the old front door. He's rich, 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 very, very rich, he's never been rich before.
But once we were into the more complicated musical comedy numbers, the piano didn't rise to the challenge. The first of these was my Arcadians medley, and the intro into All Down Piccadilly was pure farce, and even I knew it was probably a lost cause. The link into Back Your Fancy was more like a séance with a random thump, and Truth Is So Beautiful was becoming taxing. And then again the Piccadilly intro was more luck than judgment.
The Arcadian selection was decidedly hit and miss.
But to the music, and with an all too brief selection from the Arcadians, David Rumelle. It's nice and warm, I think that we shall have a lovely day. Very, very warm for May. Ain't it true, they say, just fancy it almost looks as though the sun's really come to stay. Oh, what that there's many a slip between the tip of the horse that wins the cup. For truth is so beautiful, if only people would believe it. Though rather difficult, we persevere and shall achieve it. Even society with toleration will receive it. So if it really doesn't hurt you, do tell the truth. You've heard of me, of course. I'm London's latest whim. I made a hit, in fact I'm it, or rather I am him. The girls all chase me around, I'm not enough to spare. And when I wish to be alone, they'll ring me up by telephone. Oh, naughty one Mayfair, oh, naughty one Mayfair. And ladies whisper, are you there? Oh, naughty, naughty one Mayfair. All down Piccadilly, dilly, 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 round by the park, you'll see ladies running up the little Willy till it gets dark. I just simply shilly, shally, shally, shilly, I fancy free. So though they try to win and woo me, though in thousands they pursue it, they can't catch me. All down Piccadilly, dilly, 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 round by the park, you'll see ladies running after little Willy till it gets dark. I just simply shilly, shally, shally, shilly, I fancy free. So even if they stop to jet me, I don't think they'll ever get me. They can't catch me.
Philip's guinea pig song was bordering on the critical, but I think the same maxim prevailed. We gave the piano a sporting chance for the first couple of bars, and then once we guessed the fate of our numbers at the hands of the upright, we rose to the challenge and ploughed on no matter what the old Joanna threw at us.
The guinea pig was just plain silly, and certain damn beats didn't happen, so I just counted the beats.
To recall those carefree shows, please welcome again Mr. Philip Lennon with Dave Burnaby's The Guinea Pig. If the little dog is sad, he'll whine and wail. If the little dog is glad, he'll wag his tail. All the pickaninnies and toms wave their little toes and frogs, but one animal I know has no tail to wag, and so how does a guinea pig know he's pleased if he hasn't got a tail to wag? All other animals you will find have got a little tail stuck on behind. If they'd only put a tail on a guinea pig and finish off a decent job, then the price of a guinea pig would go way up from a guinea up to 30 bob. Tails, if the guinea pig should fall in love someday, on his lady love he'll call, but sad to say, she returns his ring with thanks when she finds out that he's Max. So he has to go through life minus tail and minus wife. How does a guinea pig know he's pleased if he hasn't got a tail to wag? All other animals you will find have got a little tail stuck on behind. If they'd only put a tail on a guinea pig and finish off a decent job, then the price of a guinea pig would go way up from a guinea up to 30 bob. Tails, just imagine how it hurts each pig to find even little flannel shirts have tails behind. But with joy they gaily scoff when the laundress tear them off. So each pig, to show his glee, wears where his tail should be. How does a guinea pig show he's pleased if he hasn't got a tail to wag? All other animals you will find have got a little tail stuck on behind. If they'd only put a tail on a guinea pig and finish off a decent job, then the price of a guinea pig would go way up from a guinea up to 30, guinea up to 30, guinea up to 30 bob. Hence!
My intro into She's My Lovely would have made Vivian Ellis turn in his grave, or certainly expedite his demise at the time. But again, the piano wasn't quite giving up the ghost, and threw out a remarkable number of available notes.
She's My Lovely should have been sung to the piano to try and bring it round from its dilettante attitude.
She's my lovely, my Venus, and don't you agree, sir? She's my lovely, Serena's any Mona Lisa. She's the sunset art when nothing looks grey. She's the one set art I long for each day. Oh, she's my lovely, the hush that brings the early dawning. She's my lovely, the thrush that sings at early morning. And the loveliest thing about her, you see, is she's so lovely to me.
Phillips on the Amazon was certainly a battle of wits.
On the Amazon, I fucked the words, but covered myself. The piano played about half of what was writ.
There's an angel so, not a stranger so, than the little spot I want on that I call my own. Full of insights, weird and scary sights. Every little animal that creeps and crawls and bites on the Amazon, the hypodermic smell of the Amazon, the prophylactic smell of the Amazon. You see the scarab scowl and sting, zodiacs on the wing, all the stalactites, and vicious vertebrae of the other nights. Will laryngitis slay all the parasites that come from Paracay in spring. While philosophies among the weeds will freeze you, and the Fahrenheits come out at night to seize you. Wild iota wolves are lurking in the trees and the jungle swarms. We dread isosceles where the Amazon is calling me. On the Amazon, the customs bite on the Amazon, the epiglottis bite on the Amazon, the vermicheated night all slink, where the agnostics drink all the stalactites, and vicious vertebrae of the ortholites, when I'm trying to slay all the parasites that come from Paracay in spring. Starling equinox among the rocks will scare you, and the metaphors with hungry jaws ensnare you. Frenzied aneroids infest the hills and slopes, everyone avoids the deadly stethoscopes where the Amazon is calling me.
But by this time, Jennifer had developed a contingency knack. Having got the gist of where the missing notes were, she compensated by playing the same note either up or down the octave, mostly on the top end, as presumably the piano's inherent melody hadn't extended beyond middle C. But the rot was truly in for the night at the start of my bar on the Piccolo Marina. I had last sung the song at my final singing showcase in London, barely a year before.
David's Piccolo Marina was beautifully presented, but by this point the piano had packed up finally.
But it became an entirely new number in a key that would have made Kurt Weill wince. Not that I'm suggesting Jennifer ever played Weill.
To recount now the deliciously decadent lifestyle of one Mrs. Wentworth Brewster, Mr. David Rumelle with no cards, a bar at the Piccolo Marina.
In a Bijou abode, listen Barnes road, not far from the Isha bypass, there's a mother and wife, who through most of her life, let every adventure fly past. She had two strapping daughters, and a rather dull son, and a much duller husband who at 61, elected to retire, and later on expire, singing hallelujah, hey dolly no, hey dolly no, hey dolly no, he joined the feathered choir. They all of them came home soaking, having laid to rest by special request in the family vault at Woking. And then in the middle of the funeral wake, with an apple excellent Madeira cake, his widow cried, "That's done, my life's the last begun." Sing hallelujah, hey noddy no, hey noddy no, hey noddy no, in time I had some fun. A day, though hardly a jolly day, at least has set me free. We'll all have a lovely holiday on the island of Capri. In the bar on the Piccolo Marina, life called to Mrs. Wentworth Brewster. Fate beckoned her and introduced her into a rather queer, unfamiliar atmosphere. She just sit there propping up the bar beside a fisherman who sang to a guitar. When accused of having gone too far, she merely cried, "Peniculitis, fancy me, penicular." When he bellowed, senorina, sheer ecstasy at once produced a wild shriek from Mrs. Wentworth Brewster, changing her whole demeanor. And both her daughters and her sons said, "Please go home, mamma." She murmured rather biliously, "Who do you think you are? Nobody can afford to be so la-di-bloody-da." In the bar on the Piccolo Marina, every fisherman sighed, "Viva, viva, and che ragazza." When she sat on the grand piazza, everybody would rise. Every fisherman cried, "Viva, viva, che bella inglese." Someone even said, "Whoopsie-daisy," which was quite a surprise. Each night she'd make some gay excuse, and beaming with goodwill, she'd just slip something loose and totter down the hill. Sorry? To that bar on the Piccolo Marina, where love called to Mrs. Wentworth Brewster. Hot blushes of delight suffused her right round the bench she went. Picture her astonishment, day in, day out, she would gather round because she felt she was no longer on the shelf. Night out, night in, knocking back the gin, she cried, "Lava-dicka, leave-a-dicka yourself." Just for fun, 3 young sailors from Messina bowed low to Mrs. Wentworth Brewster, said "Excusey" and politely goosed her. Then there was quite a scene. Her family in floods of tears said, "Leave these men, mamma." She said they're just high-spirited like all Italians are, and most of them have a great deal more to offer than papa. In the bar on the Piccolo Marina.
And this last exertion was too much for the poor old upright, which couldn't cope at all with Philip's Bing cycle and throw out anything that was available.
I did I'm a Bird and Matilda's Wedding to about 1 note in 3 bars.
Thankfully, Philip had enough spoken patter to at least give it a breather before its final collapse at the end of Act 1.
We'll hear more of him later, but for now, and before the interval, 2 of Mr. Bingham's songs, I'm a Bird and Matilda. Philip Leather and Mr. David Rumelle.
I will sing, but I'm all the flutter. I feel like a bird. Yes, I believe I am. One day there sang a little bird, despondent and depressed. It made a noise it hadn't heard, then fell out of its nest. For fate knows best. It woke up in a golden cage to live in luxury. Though what occurred is somewhat blurred. That little bird was me. Tweet, 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 tweet. A box of drill for tea. I'm a bird, I'm a bird, I'm a bird. Not a word if you've heard, I'm a bird. When I warble or trill, the forest may ill, but no matter, I'm never deterred. I am not, as you see, very big. I can hop from a tree to a twig, and I'm staying out late, quite determined to sing. But my head should be snugly tucked under my wing. I'm not Kylie Minogue, and I'm not Douglas Nick. I'm a bird, I'm a bird. Let me fly, let me fly. Let me scream like a lark, with a shout of joy. Oh, I think I was very loud through a cloud. I can beat Richard Branson and sing like John Hanson. Then I will drop on an old lady's bonnet and die. Do not sigh, by and by, I'll be doing my bit from the sky. I'm a bird, oh, buzzo. If you know oh and wazzo, mo. I'm that duck in the ark, I'm that lark in the park, always caught on the air or the flow. I should marry and feather my nest, some young millionaire crane with a crest. I've expected to wear the get rude each year. Well, it's often been said that my taste's rather queer. Well, I'm sharing this bed with an old chanticleer. As a bird, as a bird. Oh, look, there goes Icarus. Oh, what a horrible, nasty mess. Oh, dear. I'm a bird, I'm a crow, I'm a rook. And I sometimes don't know where to look for a crust or a crumb when the winter has come. Till I fly to the cookery book. I'm a swan, I'm a hen, I'm a goose. And as soon as my feathers are loose, I shall take my farewell at so gay déjeuner. Well, it's often been said that it's très distingué to be stuffed by the gentry on Michaelmas Day. As a bird, as a bird. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Richard has already mentioned, the cabaret and variety artist Douglas Bing, it was my very great privilege to know Dougie Bing for the last 12 years of his life. And over that period of time, he taught me practically all of his songs, and I've been performing them wherever I can get to be ever since. He died in 1987, a few years ago now. This year, 1993, if he had been alive, would have been his 100th birthday. And earlier this year, I was rather privileged to be asked by the British Musical Society in London if I would top the bill of the second half performing Dougie's act. Well, it was rather a nice little event, I must say. I was very nervous, obviously, so I got quite a lot of billing that I thought I'd bring with me tonight and read to you, because I was quite pleased with some of this. And various letters arrived before I went to do it. I had one, and it said, I am so pleased to have the opportunity of meeting and becoming friendly with Douglas. He was a wonderful man. Thank you so much again. With my very best wishes, Barbara Cartland. And then I had another one, which said, I saw Dougie doing his Spring and I'm a Tree songs at the Comedy Theatre in London. I think in the early 30s. I do hope your centenary show went well. He was a dear creature and must have rejoiced in your friendship and discipleship. With all good wishes, yours sincerely, Alec Guinness. And then, I'm really not proud of this one. Dear Mr. Leather, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was interested to know that on the 4th of May, to mark the centenary of Douglas Bing's birthday, you are performing the material which he made famous and which he taught you during the last years of his life. Her Majesty indeed hopes that this will be a very special occasion and a very happy one. Yours sincerely, Francis Campbell Preston, who is the Queen Mother's lady in waiting. So I'm now going to finish the first half, and I've just got my little bits and pieces on with one of Dougie's songs that he always used to use as a finale piece, as a curtain call. I should mention that Dougie's act in the 20s and 30s, it was quite unthinkable to go out in what we would call drag. And so you had to wear the white tie and tails, and he would add what he used to say, oh, I just added a little handsome nonsense. And so just a handsome nonsense is what I call the show when I did the whole thing. And this little song is all about a lady who's really not very happy by the fact that, well, I think I'll leave it to fate and see what happens. It's all about Matilda. Thank you, gentlemen. Matilda stands dressed for her wedding in a rich gown of pure white satin, and the garment that she'll go to bed in is of hand-scolloped pink crepe de chine. The maid put the finishing touches when message is left at the door. She reads it, her bosom she clutches, then moans as she swoons to the floor. Says all this idle chatting, take off me virgin ring, take off me gown of white satin, me arms broke to bits underneath, take back me horse and the carriage, send back me gorgeous clothes, there ain't going to be no marriage, my fiancé's turned out one of those.
And that finished Act 1.
I don't recall much of an inquest in the interval over our accompaniment, but I vaguely remember Jennifer being somewhat subdued and deeply embarrassed. Richard just kept his own counsel, and Philip and I just got on with preparing for the next onslaught.
Act 2 had more hysteria. The cabaret boys passed off only because David and I just kept singing, and thankfully in the right key.
Our opening to Act 2 was the joyous Cabaret Boys from the pen of Douglas Byng and Lance Lister, which set the scene for the rest of the act, but fortissimo singing and much gaiety got us through.
Always night and gay, life is glad in May. We are starting in the London cabaret. We're the big sensation of the show, and the managers all adore us, so you ought to know. We're the boys, the cabaret boys. We're the leading and the nightclub's only joys. Although our songs are always on the bright side, on Saturday night we sometimes end up slightly on the tight side. Come close to the mum when we hear the music of a Lemus drum. We started upon the musical with dear old Dad, and though we went on first we didn't do so bad, till we scored a couple of strong men and we both went mad. We're the nightclub joys, the cabaret boys. Right just after 1, laughing in your hum, and then the morning dress and hat we both will don. We are all the rage as we take the stage, singing like canaries in a gilded cage. We're the social pivot of the scene. At 11 o'clock each evening you will hear us scream. We're the boys, the cabaret boys. We're the leading and the nightclub's only joys. Although our songs are never on the black side, on Saturday night we sometimes end up slightly on the slack side. We're fine at Christmas time, as the wicked robbers in the pantomime. We fought against the fairy queen of starry nights, and though we are not supposed to sing and dance by rights, well, we do a couple of high kicks and we burst our tights. We're the nightclub joys, the cabaret boys. We're the boys, the cabaret boys. We're the leading and the nightclub's only joys. We soon shall be a national institution. We've been in the game for 20 years, oh what a constitution. Stars arrive in the cars, and we sing of being a couple of jolly guitars. We dance at the Russian Ballet and Midnight Review. There's still lots of things we'd like to show to you. Oh, we wish we could dance in nothing like the fairies do. We're the nightclub joys, the cabaret boys.
And then the rot really set in. Jennifer had another weapon in her armoury. When she'd given up on notes either below or up the octave, she filled in the gaps by vocally la-la-ing the missing notes in full soprano. The intros to everything became the butt of all the jokes, with plink, plonk, thud and diminished fifth being pretty much the norm.
I must have everything Hungarian, had none of the military precision it normally has, but the patter got a few laughs.
When I was a baby, I cried to the moon. My mother had sang me a national tune. It opened her eyes and she said with surprise, oh, how patriotic for one of his size. So when I grew older, I followed my star. I served as a soldier in countries afar. Now I'm back on the land where nature has planned that all the choicest offerings be close at hand. It's the land where troubles disappear. Every learned latitudinarian knows the magic of the atmosphere. On the open plains, in the country lanes, even down the drains, it's infer. You can live to be a centenarian in the hearty, healthy Hungria. Oh yes, Hungary's my middle name. The wine, the music, the gypsies. Oh, I love gypsies. They're so much cleaner than squirrels. Do you know, I had a maiden aunt who went to a gypsy once. She said, no, I'm feeling whole, hot and bothered. I think that love is on the way. Well, the gypsy took one look at her and said, well, lady, you may be hot, but you'll never be bothered. Of course, I learned very lot. I started very early on. I learned an awful lot from my father, the late Count Rudy, and very rude he got. And as for grandfather, well, he was the great lover of all ages. Yes,
Didn't matter how old they were. Of course, I got entangled very early on. Oh, yes. There was that little English schoolgirl, little Elsie Bullwinkle. Oh, we got on very well together. Until she went to a fancy dress party dressed as a harp. I tried to play Alice for Art Thou in her conservatory and broke all the strings. And then, of course, there was the beautiful Alcona. Well, she was much more lively. When the bishop stopped her in the street the other day and said, "I prayed for you last night," she said, "Oh, how stupid of you, I'm in the telephone book." Oh, I'm very down. But I must have anything Hungarian. It's the land where troubles disappear. Every learned latitudinarian knows that love is 80 carat here. If the Parlement on the Côte d'Azur is a much too pure affair, you can wave goodbye and say some Ferian and depart for healthy hungry air.
A small hotel was a total abortion. As David tells me, he thought his sash was wrapped around the chair. So he moved the chair to release it. But no, still he was stuck, only to realise he was standing on it. Miss Otis I did on the move, really to give it a bit of variety.
But on now to 1934, and for the Charlotte Review of that year, High Diddle Diddle, which starred Douglas Bing, the somewhat enigmatically styled June and Doris Hare, who is still appearing in the West End incidentally, Mr. Fairbrother with Cole Porter's Miss Otis Regrets.
It's James the butler calling. Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. Madam, Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. She is sorry to be delayed. The last evening down in Lover's Lane she strayed. Madam, Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. When she woke up and found that her dream of love was gone, Madam, she ran to the man who had led her so far astray. And from under her velvet gown, she drew a gun and shot her lover down. Madam, Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today. When the mob came and got her and dragged her from the jail, Madam, they strung her up on that old willow across the way. And the moment before she died, she lifted up her lovely head and cried. Madam, Miss Otis regrets she's unable to lunch today.
The high spot was David doing It and One Good Boy Gone Wrong from the Desert Song. It sounded as if David was singing in one room while being accompanied by someone who was learning to play the piano in another.
There was a time when sex seemed something quite complex. Mr. Freud then employed words we never had heard of. He kept us on a string, we kept on wondering. But the seed of sin now at last has been found by Eleanor Glynn. In one word, she defined this indefinable thing. She calls it it's, just simply it's. That is the words they're using now for that improper fraction, that vague attraction that gets reaction somehow. You've either got or you have not that certain thing that makes them cling. So if the boys don't seem to fall for you, there's just no hope at all for you. Give up and quit, you'll never hit if you have not got it. Gosh, I might as well confess it if I didn't you would guess it. Women are the bane of my youth. Everyone's a tiger cat with me. It's sad but certain that with women life can never be smooth, for they can trip you with words and grip you like quicksand. Someday, dear, you'll be mine. want you, see I don't want you. I'll be a constant pin for something sweet to him to whom you pine. One good boy gone wrong. One good boy gone wrong. Youth must have its fling, so they say. Here's when I start flinging my youth away. One more victim licked. Once more sex has clicked. Once more salmon who's been tricked and rattled. Just another boy gone wrong. So that is it, just simply it. I wasn't took from any book. I'm 21, no older. I shake my shoulder, my eyes grow bolder, and look, I have two lips, but look at those. Look at these eyes, look at this nose. My personality just oozes out. I think that my tune is out. I'd better hit, I'll never hit. It seems I've not got it.
David's Schnitzel Mitski was done with Jennifer la-la-ing the intros, and I was by this point in hysterics on the side.
The climax of Piano versus Jennifer versus Us came in my obscure Jerome Kern number from Sally called the Schnitzel-Comiskey. I think this was the one time I lost words and music completely and fumbled my way through for a couple of lines until I found my part. The piano certainly didn't walk beside you on this occasion.
There's a river that everyone knows. Through my country it peacefully flows. The people are splendid though rather unique. They like revolutions at least twice a week. On Sundays you may be a king, and on Mondays you won't be a thing. On the banks of the Schnitzel-Comiskey they're all just as wild as can be. Any time, without reason or rhyme, you may find it far wiser to flee. In the night they may rouse you and chase you and prod you with bayonets like me. And they'll cut down in haste all your government ways where the Schnitzel flows down to the sea. The telephone there is a joy, not merely a troublesome toy. A call isn't simply a matter of chance, and you don't have to make them a week in advance. But one thing they never forget, that the bills for the calls you don't get. On the banks of the Schnitzel-Comiskey they're all just as wild as can be. You may find it far wiser to flee. On the night they may arouse you and chase you and prod you with bayonets like me. And they'll cut down in haste all your government ways where the Schnitzel flows down to the sea. We've no servant problem out there. We've housemates enough and to spare. The cooks and domestics are all so unique. They work like the dickens for $5 a week. The maids are so sweet and polite that they come round and kiss you goodnight. On the banks of the Schnitzel-Comiskey we haven't a liquor control. Any time you can just swim in wine and let breakfast go clean up the bowl. And the drinks have a wonderful kick, for they like them as strong as can be. There's a cute native brew made from vitriol and glue with on the banks of the Schnitzel-Comiskey no animals act on stage. Little dogs do not hop over logs, and canaries aren't smashed in a cage. Elephants dressed in comical pants are not goaded to climb up a tree. And the flea of a will like the top of the bill where the Schnitzel goes down to the sea.
Flora MacDonald, I couldn't resist. Don't shoot the pianist, she's doing her best. I got a few laughs.
Even Philip was beginning to lose the plot, and during his final Douglas Byng set, turned to Jennifer and inquired, "Are you still alive, dear? I haven't heard from you for so long."
Now all the clans in Scottish land, there's none that can compare with a bonny old clan MacDonald. You'll find them everywhere. Pride of the pack's Flora Mac, that's me, the flower of the flock. My Highland fling made everything turn purple with the shock. Flora MacDonald, Harry with Haggis dripping with dew. Marvel's the night at the oot of the heather, bending the bracken with the young Charlie Stew. Flora MacDonald, I and Charles Maltby made me go forth. Clutching his kilt, I shot over the border, oh, well over the border. Oh, Flora MacDonald, the head Now before still night, a time's gone by when Charlie came to sup, and Marley brought it, oh my God, well, I had to put him up. One night I found his appetite was on the hill and raw, but I said, no, you'll have your oats in bed and not before. Yes, we're very fond of porridge, very addicted to the wee groat, but we girls had to work very hard in the days of the Scottish War. We have to do our bit, we have to do a good deal. Do you know, I've never seen so many risings of the lowlands in my life. And as for those banks and braes of Bonnie Doon, well, everybody was so busy there was no Italian Doon at all. But Scotland was very, very gay. People taking high roads and low roads, and bodies meeting bodies through the rye. Oh, yes. Yes, at any moment, you might get your feet cut off with a sickle. Not always your feet. It would appear that everybody's body was rubbed over with gin. Yes, it says so in the famous song, Gin a body, coming through the rye. And those afternoons when the camels were coming to tea, most peculiar time with the camels, you know. The gilly used to rush in and go, the camels coming and all, the camels coming and all, oh, I'm tired of it. Always coming, never arrived. No sooner got the gathering of the clan when old Mr. Campbell burst his bagpipes and the party was off. The life and soul of the whole campaign was Charles Stewart himself. Oh, I will say that. Yes. You know, they used to call him the young pretender. I had to hide him under my skirt once for safety. Not much pretense about him, but one was there he was, out in the mornings, playing those Hieland games with the men. Do you know, he once tossed his caber so far it was found stuck up an old lady's girdle cake in Inverness. Miles away. Still the old girl was very pleased, you know, just a royal present from over the sea. Charles and I were always quarrelling, when we had a terrible row at the Caledonian Hotel, Edinburgh. All about nothing, really. What had happened was, Charles went into the hotel and asked for a tartan rum. And got both. All the poor boy wanted was just a bit of fancy work under the settee. I changed the subject very, very quickly and I talked finance, always dear to the heart, my Scott. And I said to him, Charles, my dear Charles, what do you think of the new fourpenny bit? And he said, well, where does she live? On we went merrily on, fleeing before the enemy attacked on every side. I mean, Charles had some terrible attacks, you know. Oh, yes. Yes, it was that dreadful morning he passed here and had to rush to Preston Fans. Terrible place. Of course, there's nowhere to sit down at all. It's all ground. But through it all, whether in sadness or in gladness, with the sound of a pea-brook brocking o'er the hill, there was always to Lord MacDonald, Lord MacDonald, Lord College again and again. Ooh, to the hills, the wind in her tongue, ooh, those young grouse, and never a sign of an old button Ben, whatever that was. For Lord MacDonald, deep as the sea in the old father fall, he never a traitable snatch of the spoken Hopkins knew. Oh, Lord MacDonald, the hen of the north.
But we've since said that by the time we got to the music hall selection, we really had chucked in the towel.
Then the finale. This was the unaccompanied version. The piano and Jennifer just thought, fuck it. I think we got through, let's all go to the music hall and let's all go down the Strand. Then watch them shuffling along. David and I sang and danced while Jennifer sat vacantly at the piano, arms folded, looking blank at the piano, thinking, what shall I press next?
With Jennifer's intro into shuffling along being a series of la 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 la.
This was too much for me. I burst out laughing and the whole farrago degenerated. At one point I was on the side while David was singing and I shouted to him, sing out, Louise, smile, baby.
That's the place to go to when the evening shadows fall. If you want a spot of laughter and you're feeling blue, go and book yourself a seat or line up in the queue. Let's all go to the music hall, where the show is gay and bright. Let's all go to the music hall, where the stars are twinkling twice a night. Whether you sit in the gallery, the circle or the pits, or whether you sit in the rain by the storm, when the busy day is done and you want to have some fun, let's all go to the music hall. Let's all go down the Strand.
The audience was pathetic, the sing-along infantile, and the end I found the whole situation totally hysterical. I felt very sorry for David because he had worked bloody hard and was very good. We were up against it from the word go. I shall never recommend this venue to anyone.
You could hear the girls declare he must be a millionaire. You could hear them sigh to wish to die. You could see them with the other eye as a man who walked the bank and Monte Carlo.
It proved too much for either of us to hold the evening together any more. We unashamedly corpsed, and I was deeply embarrassed of my unprofessionalism, albeit in the face of all odds. Having to go out into the audience to get the crowd clapping along must have been hysterical, with two theatre queens wildly clapping along to a long-dead piano played by an hysterical woman trying to compete with an instrument that should have been top on the list for bonfire night.
Somebody with me has had their way. I should by now be a proud and happy bride, but I still have to keep my single name. I was proposed to by Obadiah Binks in a very manly sort of way. I lent him all my money so that he could buy a home, and punctually at 12 o'clock today. And there was I, waiting at the church, waiting at the church, waiting at the church, when I found he left me in the lurch. Oh, how it did upset me. All at once he said,
he ran the note. Here's the very note, and this is what he wrote. Can't get away to marry you today. My wife won't let me.
I love my little cat, I do. Its coat is oh so warm. It comes with me to school each day and sits upon the form. When teacher says, why do you bring that little cat of yours? I tell her that I bring my cat along with me because Daddy wouldn't mind me a bow wow. Daddy wouldn't mind me a bow wow. I've got a little cat and I'm very fond of that, but I'd rather have a bow wow wow. Daddy wouldn't mind me a bow wow. Daddy wouldn't mind me a bow wow. I've got a little cat and I'm very fond of that, but I'd rather have a bow wow wow. Casey Jones, a matting on his engine. Casey Jones with his orders in his hand. Casey Jones, matting on his engine and took his farewell trip to the promised land. Casey Jones, matting on his engine. Casey Jones with his orders in his hand. Casey Jones, matting on his engine and took his farewell trip into the promised land. Oh, Antonio, he's gone away. Left me alone, Neo, all on my own, Neo. I long to see him with his new sweet arms. Then up will go Antonio and his ice cream comes. Oh, I'm going, yes, I'm going, with a love that's ever flowing. Should I call and marry your mind? Not a cent, and my clothes are only lent. All the same, she'll think me just fine. Now I dream, now I sleep, and the times it almost seemed that the sun would never shine. That's why I'm going, yes I'm going, mighty soon I'll be alone to that home and money of mine. When I take my morning promenade, quite a fashion card on the promenade. Oh, I don't mind nice boys staring hard if it satisfies their desire. Do you think my dress is a little bit, just a little bit? Well, not too much it is. If it shows my shape just a little bit, it's a little bit the boys admire. My dear old Swanee, I give the world to me. Among the folks in D.I.X.I. my is waiting for me, praying for me, down by the Swanee. The folks have gone, will see me no more when I go to that Swanee shore. The Swanee, how I love you, my dear old Swanee. I give the world to me. Among the folks in D.I.X.I. my is waiting for me, praying for me, down by the Swanee. The folks have gone, will see me no more when I go to that Swanee shore. Has anybody seen my tiddler? Tiddle, little, 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 I caught that little fish with some cotton and a pin. Oh, how I laughed when I dragged him in. But come in, no mo, dear-o, that rude boy Dinky Diddler. He poked his fingers in the gallipot and pinched my tiddler. Has anybody seen my tiddler? Tiddle, little, 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 I caught that little fish with some cotton and a pin. Oh, how I laughed when I dragged him in. Oh, come in, no mo, dear-o, that rude boy Dinky Diddler. He poked his fingers in the gallipot and pinched my tiddler.
No one apologised to us for the conditions that we were placed in, and a very slick and competent show slid gradually into a depression that had only been bettered by the 30s and the Wall Street crash.
As we took our bows, the curtains closed, and Jennifer played the play-off that Philip always used for every show, and ironically the music was called The Wobbly Wheel. On this occasion, the piano and sheet music were simpatico, entitled if nothing else.
Fortunately, we all found it very funny, and I really couldn't give a toss. The evening ended endearingly with David and Richard in the Highbury pub, and today, I hope, will never, never happen again.
Richard, Philip and I repaired for an inquest back to Philip's house in Cecil Road for a brief inquest, but we really couldn't be angry or upset about it all. It had been great fun, and we'd given our all, as we always did in those days. I often wondered if we'd give the same performance today, and yes, of course we would, true to the duty of vitality. Philip very wisely told us to go home and write our various diaries, lest we forget, and we could do no more than refer to these and listen to the private handbag recording I'd wisely set in motion. Ironically, a video of that very evening later emerged to encapsulate the whole Handsworth experience.
Wednesday, the 29th of September, David Rumelle brought me a tape of last Saturday's show. It sounds even worse than I imagined. I don't think we shall get invited back, and even if we did, I would decline. It was a bloody nightmare. I'm glad we charged as much as we did. At least we didn't quite prostitute ourselves.
In the years that followed, Jennifer helped me with a couple of audition pieces. Return to the Forbidden Planet comes to mind. And she never ceased to apologise for what she thought had been her fault, which of course was just a quirk of fate. I last saw Jennifer in Eastbourne on the wet Wednesday matinee of Dames at Sea in 2005, and during the interval, having spotted Jennifer sat very near, her opening gambit was another reminder of that very special evening. Philip moved to Holland in 1994, and we are still constantly in touch by letter, phone and email, and nothing will ever diminish the experience that was Handsworth. Salad Days is a wonderful show about a magical piano called Minnie. I'm not sure what name our cottage upright would have garnered. I'm sure we all had our adjectives for it.
And to quote that lovely show, if I could be given a second chance, I'd live it all over again. To dear Philip, Jennifer and Richard, with love and deep, deep gratitude.